I think the way that influencers play a part is arguably when you flip that on its head and you actually use influencers sometimes to create those worlds or to be the lead of those worlds, and then to have brands either present or sponsor those environments, because I think gamers inherently relate more to influencers or creators than they do to brands. I think everyone does, right? It's just a human connectivity.
Welcome back to Brands in Play, your podcast for everything immersive marketing. I'm Nick Hill, co-founder and chief innovation officer at Sawhorse.
And Alban Priou, strategic marketing consultant. This week on the show, brands are seeing less return on their ad spend. Toyota launches their own anime. Ape Yacht Club is making their comeback. And Netflix ads are blowing up.
And for our real-time review, I'm checking out the Dallas Cowboys integration into Fortnite.
And later, we'll also be sitting down with Ross Crump, founder and CEO of Ardent, to find out more about the world of influencer marketing and why brands should be building on real communities.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the show. So let's get into it.
Hello, Nick. How are you this week?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. Before we jump into our news this week, I think I wanted to give a bit of a flag to brands, and I'm sure you would have seen this, and I'm sure you're working already on project for Halloween Day. But spooky season has very well landed in the world of gaming, and I just thought it's not something like, sadly we can't really review all of the updates that have been generated around the holidays, but I just thought it was something to flag for brands, that when they are, thinking about their virtual world strategy, that they should really think about the culturally events that are happening as well outside of the environment. It's not always about, what's happening inside Roblox or Fortnite, but events like, gift giving, Halloween. You can guarantee that a lot of these really exciting worlds will have updates and are actually generating a lot of new visits due to that. So just wanted to give a little bit of a little flag for brands to think about, and also maybe checking out some of the top games at the moment. There is on Roblox a Halloween highlights where they're highlighting some of the best updates that happened for Halloween. So I just wanted to put it out there. I know in the US it's massive, a bit less so in Europe, Halloween, but it is steeping into like gaming culture.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think that it's definitely a sort of a ongoing cultural moment every year. Inside of gaming, you'll see all of these activations across UGC and traditional, but especially in UGC. So that is a great flag for brands to think about how can they attach themselves to Halloween culture at around this time. And you mentioned the Roblox games, which are awesome, but also we got to give credit to Fortnite for all of their IP partnerships that they did around Halloween, like
For sure.
Scooby-Doo, all the Warner Brothers villains. Like they
Wednesday.
collectively, Wednesday with Netflix.
Morning dance.
Yeah, I mean they crushed it. Like
Yeah,
it's always impressive how much IP they bring in, but they did a great job, I thought.
absolutely. But without further ado, let's go to the news.
Let's go.
So I'm first. So the first thing I wanted to highlight is a new Shutterstock creative report that has come out. It's their creative impact report. And it kind of ties in with an article that the FT has released recently this month. But essentially, the Shutterstock creative was done in partnership, and I cannot remember. I think it was WPP, but I might be wrong here. With an agency, essentially to understand what is the impact of ads and what is the return on ad spend. And what they've seen is that between 2023 and 2024, there's definitely been an increase in ad spend, so up 33%. However, the effect on those ads have drastically slowed down or lowered. So the effect on these ads purchases, actually, the intent has rose only by 70%. So that's a 12% impact gap compared to last year,
Mm.
which I thought was really interesting. And I know you and I speak a lot about AI and, how that is going to impact the ad content or the creative content that we see. And this is something that is mentioned in this report, where sadly a lot of brands are struggling to cut through the noise because there's so much content that is being popped. But
And,
equally,
and platforms.
people are also skimming through a lot more those like when they see an AI ad or they see AI content. So that I thought that was something that was quite interesting. Where while there is obviously this issue with there is so much content out there to be able to break through the noise, with the rise of AI, actually, people are engaging less and disconnecting less because there's less of this human creativity that is implicated. So it kind of goes back to what you and I were debating is the usage of AI from the full cycle of creation, I think is where there is an issue because there's obviously now this floodgate of content that is just a bit like, I don't know, not really like giving any value to the user.
Well, I think just taking one step back, I really responded to the fact that, these ads are not being effective and this whole volume game isn't working. I think that speaks to the concept of personalization, and adding value within marketing. Like there's so much noise. We
So
see, I don't know,
much.
what's the statistic? We see like some crazy 20,000 ads a day or something wild like that. Um, so we don't retain anything. So if you're a brand and you want to like connect with a consumer, a customer out there, I think you have to get something that's going to catch their attention, and then once you have it, give them some sort of interactivity, some sort of value, some sort of takeaway, so that like it actually resonates. And I think this report speaks to that, and I think
Yeah.
that's basically what our show is all about. So I was happy to see it.
Absolutely. The last thing that I'll mention, just because it dropped today, but Meta is going to release a like subscription model, the same way as YouTube, where you can now subscribe not to see sponsored content, which I thought was really interesting. So now, now you're gonna have even less people to target with your own ad, breaking through the noise of like I just think it's going to be incredibly chaotic, this model, but we'll see how it unfold, and actually quite interesting to in the context of our interview today with Ross and influencers. But
Yes.
what do you have next?
Well, my first story is all about how Toyota is making an anime film. Have you seen this?
No, so you're breaking the news to me, but we
Okay, well,
that was your bet.
it's called Grip. It's a Toyota movie, and it's coming on November 5th. It's a 10-minute anime film created by Toyota. It's part of a season series that began last
What?
year. So this is adding on to that. And from a creative standpoint, the theme is all about like AI and sort of like humanity racing AI in cars, and what's going to succeed. So it's kind of like very topical for today. And then one note about this is ultra high quality. So the anime studio and the director behind this are fully native in that space, and so the quality should be top notch, and it looks pretty sick from what I can see. And it's all about like product placement. It's like focusing on the vehicles and highlighting how cool they are, how they work,
Mhm.
and kind of exciting they are. And this is focusing on the GR racing series, which wasn't around when I was young and had a Toyota. But essentially, this is like the cooler version of the cars, the more like sporty.
Okay.
Um, and so, like, why is Toyota doing this? And essentially, it's they want to have reappraisal with Gen Z, because the Gen Z audience always saw Toyotas as like um, cost effective, good mileage, but not that exciting.
Mhm.
So there was a big play in recent years to kind of shift that into being like, these are cool cars, these are fast cars, these are cars I want. And the company targeted specifically Asian Americans in the U.S. Uh, to focus on. So that's why they did this anime style. But what's interesting is in the results, the this is performed so well, way beyond that target audience and much broader audience across the U.S. and globally. So it's the indicator and the reasoning why they're investing more in anime. And they've seen a double-digit lift in brand lift study that they did with this. So it's clearly working. And I think that my takeaways are, it's really good timing because this is coming off of the success of K-pop Demon Hunters,
Mhm.
and we know how that blew up. And I think it's really an opportunity for the company to connect with Gen Z and offer value and just stay relevant. We talked like about how Duolingo is doing this, and Gap, and I think we're just going to see so much more of this. And I think it's smart and it's simple. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I haven't seen the one that they've released last year, but I'll go check it out. I think what I love now is the brands actually daring to do longer form content as well. Because if you're gonna do a series, there's a bit of a commitment. I'm always, I always wonder, is that available on YouTube? Do you have I think my main concern with these is like, where do this type of content lives? And I find it more interesting maybe when the brand can be part of like a bigger project, maybe. But I still, I still think the fact that they've had such an increase in brand awareness and sentiment towards the brand speaks volume to the impact of this campaign.
All right. Well, I'm very curious about your next story because Web3 has like not been top of mind for me for quite a while.
No, I
So
mean, it hasn't
go.
been top of mind for us since I would say like maybe 22, 23. So, Bored Ape, sorry, Yacht Club is making a comeback, or at least just, um,
Well, first off, Alban, how many board apes do you own?
none. I think, like first of all, like I didn't have the budget to be honest to invest in any of them. They were so expensive back
No
then.
doubt.
And I was checking on OpenSea, and they're still obviously nowhere near the value that they were previously, but they're still not cheap. And specifically with the existing, economy of the ape coins, etc. But anyway, not the topic of today. But it is. I think if everyone thinks of Web3 and NFTs, I feel like the Bored Ape, the monkeys that they had, is kind of symbolic of that, and they kind of picked it up. We had, Jimmy Fallon that had one. We had Paris Hilton. Then there was
Eminem.
like Eminem. You had Snoop Dogg that also had this massive partnership with them. So there was a lot of momentum. And let's not forget that Yuga Lab, who's behind this, raised 450 millions seed round with A16Z, which is one of the biggest VCs. So this is a really big, they raise a lot of funds to be able to create this virtual world metaverse. That was the kind of the vision that they had. The markets were like the company was valued at 4 billion, but let's not forget again that was in 2022. I'm sure now it would have been a lot less. But what is interesting is that in November, the open world platform is now launching. So there was a lot of tease. This is called the Otherside. So there was a lot of tease around this.
Yeah.
What is cool with it is that they've done a partnership with Improbable, which essentially is a tech company that allows them to have like thousands of people into one server. So if you've seen footages of like hundreds of people all gathering together, this is mainly thanks to the technology of Improbable. But I wanted to
And
have a
just
little
to add some
debate.
context for some of the listeners that might not understand, on these UGC gaming platforms, um, they're free for everyone to play online, but they have to, due to like technological limitations, they
Correct.
limit server sizes to about like 30 people to sometimes like 50 people. And then once it maxes out, it clones itself and pops somewhere else, and there's a different group of 50 people.
That's right.
But the other side, right, with their improbable tech is like hundreds or maybe
Of
even
people. So it
thousands of
feels
avatars
incredibly
in one
busy. Like
place.
there's like I think at some point it's like too many people actually.
It's kind
But
of
it
like a
does
music
it does feel
festival. It's
very
like being at
buzzy.
Coachella or
That's
something.
right. It does feel very buzzy. But anyway, so there's like I was just a little bit I just wanted to have a conversation with you, to be honest, because we don't know what will happen with that. There is obviously a question mark on whether they will be able to compete with Roblox and Fortnite. Now that the hype of Web3 is kind of done, and a lot of like NFT values, as I say, the Ape coin, which is essentially the currency, the NFT currency that is associated with their world, is also like less than half the value. So they really
Mhm.
peaked on 2022, and since then it's really gone down. So I was just wondering, who are the people that are going to be in these environments? And, was it worth the investment that A16Z has put behind it? Like 450 million is huge. The thing that I thought was really interesting is that in some of the communication that they've mentioned is that there's a lot of emphasis around UGC. So they are releasing development kits. So I don't know if Sohorse is going to look into that. But there's now what they call the ODK, which is like other side development kit that allows people essentially to create their own world, their own environment that I'm sure you can monetize, and that becomes like cryptocurrency around it. The one thing that I thought could play in their favor is that they are going after a user profile that's very different to Roblox. So
Mhm.
we know that people that are into like collectibles, NFT, and are still like in this, it's not as big as it used to be, but there's still a really big Web3 community of hardcore people that are trading day in, day out. Like I was on OpenSea and there's still a lot of movement around the Bored Ape. So it might be targeting a completely new user base, and it could be actually quite interesting for brands to look at who are these users. The other thing that they've done is that I think they understood the issue with Web3 is that not everyone wanted to have a crypto wallet. So they are actually allowing people to just create an account with an email address. So you don't like they've really reduced the barrier to entry to be able to go in there so that it still feels buzzy and not, the footage that we've seen of Decentraland and other Web3 platform where it's deserted.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely skeptical of pretty much anything that is crypto based or
Yeah,
Web3 based. But if they've got enough funds to continue to grow it, maybe there's a chance. I think that with any of these UGC platforms, you need a healthy organic community of builders
that's
that
right.
want to be there, they want to build, they want to play. So, like, the question will be, do those people even exist? I don't know. If they
I
do,
don't know.
great. If they don't, then you're just like you're trying to um, you're just spending money to make things happen, but there's no organic growth, so it's not going to
Yeah.
survive, you know?
I feel like people that are in this environment, they're still there to make money. That's the main reason why you own NFTs. It's an investment and you're expecting it to grow so that you can resell it. I just don't see I don't think their core reason for being part of this community is like to play and have fun. I think it's more to share intel on where they're gonna invest. So I don't know, like I agree with you. But
Well, if
well,
and when a brand activates there, we will cover it and we will
yes,
tell
exactly.
everyone what's up.
What do you have next? Last story for this week.
Last story for today is how the Netflix ads are blowing up, and Netflix is doing all these new moves, a lot of which are sort of revolving around AI. So I thought it was worth talking about. So their ad business it had its best quarter ever in Q3. It's 17% revenue growth, and Netflix's projected revenue expectations for 2025 is $45.1 billion. So, like,
Not bad.
that's definitely working for them. Good for them. They also have this perspective on AI. They're really like leaning into it. They think generative AI presents a significant opportunity to deliver more value for all the people involved. So improving recommendations for customers, and then arming creators with tools to achieve their visions and deliver even more impactful titles. And in addition to that, they have announced some partnerships. So Mattel and Hasbro are going to be the global co-master toy licensees of K-pop Demon Hunters.
Hmm.
And Netflix is doing more of this licensing partnership stuff for publishing, experiences, beauty, lifestyle, and food. So they're kind of expanding out that way. And then the big news that I think we didn't talk about, but was from a couple weeks ago, is that video
Yeah.
podcasts are coming to Netflix, partnership with Spotify early next year. So I don't know. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of innovation happening on
Hmm.
this platform. And my question to you is like, do you think Netflix is becoming an AI driven UGC platform?
No. I think it's becoming probably like a larger entertainment platform than just the like video titles. I thought that was quite interesting that they've already done gaming. They're now looking at podcasts, and we know now that video is also king for podcast. This is where people like. I feel like people are consuming podcasts as well on YouTube, so they're probably seeing a way to take some of that viewership into their platform. But we're not. This is. I mean, they're still in control. This is not a UGC platform. They're still in control of what is going on their
Yet.
platform. Huh?
Don't you think? I would say yet. Don't you think they want that if they're smart? I mean, they've
I
already
don't
pivoted
know.
from DVDs to
I know, but
streaming.
I think this is what separates them to YouTube. I think what I love about Netflix is that the content is actually of quality. And I know when I go there, and actually, like, you're right, when it comes to the recommendation, I don't know if they're already implemented it, but I just find the recommendation, like, both my husband and I have different accounts, and it's really interesting to see how his homepage is completely different, the recommendation to mine. And I feel like they've really cracked on both our personality are very different. So I just think like they're really good at like pulling up really interesting content. And unless they can make that maybe as good for, because my issue with YouTube sometimes is that I find it really hard to find good content. It's getting better. I feel like there was a moment where it was just completely diluted and it became a bit of Instagram where you didn't even see your subscribers' own content. Um, but I still feel like it's kind of hard to discover new content on YouTube, where I really love what Netflix has done. So maybe I kind of hope not, because I feel like the content at the moment is so high, and this is why I pay as well, is to get
Yeah,
provided
quality.
really high quality content. So I'm hoping not. I think what's interesting is probably more like how they are going to, where I'm really interested is from an ad point of view, is what type of ad would you be served, or how it can be customized based on what you watched.
Well,
Um
they're the company to do it, I think,
Exactly. Like, are you gonna
with Gen
see
AI.
maybe like if you watch like a show, is the character? I don't know. I think there's so much stuff that can be done because you know what people have watched and what they like, so you can really customize the
Render
ads around
custom
that.
ads, yeah, and serve
Um,
them targeted
but
in
I
a
am
targeted way.
hoping that they're not gonna open the floodgate to UGC, because this is why like I don't want to have another TikTok and another YouTube.
No, I agree. I agree on the quality side. I just wonder what happens with those podcasts. Like right now, it's curated partnerships with Spotify, but as that grows, can people upload their own stuff? Does that
Mm,
change?
I feel like
We'll
they're
see.
still gonna be super curated. Like I feel it's gonna be like the Joe Rogan and the Diary of a CEO. It's gonna be like those really top, like they know not like they don't even need Spotify anymore. They just need a distribution channel. And I think it's probably Spotify trying to keep them. Like we know that Stephen Bartlett, for example, is Edward, our producer, mentioned this last week, but he's launching his own platform for podcasts.
Yeah.
So it's probably Spotify trying to like retain those really big creators on, hey, we now have this new distribution channel because we now have a partnership with Netflix. Stay on Spotify, because otherwise you won't be able to be on Netflix. So I think it's just them trying to like make their platform up more appealing. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Well, let's see. We'll keep an eye on it. But
Yeah.
let's keep moving. We got to move on to our real time review, where I'm going to be checking out the Dallas Cowboy activation on Fortnite. So
Let's go.
let's go. All right. So this week, Alban, I jumped into the NFL team. The Dallas Cowboys had an integration into Fortnite. They integrated into 4 maps. Are you a American football fan?
No.
Have you seen
I know
it?
I know about the sports, but like the amount of commercial, like I've no, no, not my sports. I prefer
Not for
rugby.
you.
This is rugby,
Oh,
it's for me,
rugby.
but
Okay, okay. That's
not
that's
not American football.
well, look, they're a really good team. I'm not a huge football follower myself, but
Okay.
they're like one of the top teams. And so this activation is all about how that team brought the IP into Fortnite, but not through a traditional partnership with Epic. This was through they partnered with the agency Zoned to figure out how to get that IP into the Fortnite ecosystem, and I think they did a pretty cool job. So this is in partnership with Lenovo, the brand. So it's sort of like a
Yes.
co-branded situation. They identified 4 different maps, one of which was organized by our friends at Chartis. And the maps they went into was Secret Red versus Blue, Fortnite Finishers FFA, Speed Realistics 2v2, and Zombie Escape Tag. And also, as part of this campaign, they did an integration or partnership with FCHQ. FCHQ is a companion app for Fortnite creative creators and players, and that's powered by Overwolf. We also had on the show. So the whole thing about FCHQ is that it helps with discovery. So it helps creators get their games out and discovered. And then it helps players get rewards. So it gives them like custom quests, and then they can earn stuff. And it's kind of a platform that kind of, makes that all happen. So
That's cool.
yeah, so they did a partnership like not only in the maps on the platform, but also off the platform with this companion app. So it was a kind of a smart strategy. And then they created these cowboy coins and these in-game wearables, like these Dallas Cowboys swags, and you can win up to 250,000 V-Bucks.
Oh, wow. That is the real price.
Yeah, so there's some money on the line there. And they had in-game overlays, and yeah, so I was kind of the only person in there at first, and later some
Did you
people.
play?
Well, it was early in the morning. It was like
There you go.
5 o'clock my time.
It
But
was
it's a little bit
5 a.m. and
more.
no one was there.
So yeah, my bad. And also, I didn't understand the FCHQ tie-in because it wasn't quite clear to me as a user experience inside that game. Um, but essentially, you play these sort of zombie versus human games where depending on who's in your server, it identifies which side you're on, and then you kind of battle it out. And you in these different forms of mini games, and then you can unlock those wearables. So I versed a couple of people and had mixed results. A little bit of fun. It's not really like my type of game, so but not bad. I'll say the good was great organic integration and natural gameplay. So what they did right was going into these games and figuring out how to put the IP, thread the IP into the games that are already there. So I think they did that well. Also, the art is fantastic. All the custom art that was made looked good. There were the Cowboys helmets and all kinds of different branded gear and logos throughout the space in a pretty tasteful way, which I thought was cool. Also, in the zombie game, they recreated the AT&T Stadium, which I didn't get to see it. I saw it from afar. I didn't get to play inside it, but it looked, from what I saw online, it looked really cool. The bad, I don't think there's enough players for me to like have a competitive experience. So that was a little flat, but maybe that's on me for going at the wrong time. And then I wish,
Not the
yeah,
time for Fortnite, especially when you're on the US servers.
no, that's a great, that's fully on me. That's all the time I had, I had to get it in, get it where you
Just
fit
put
it.
it in, but
But I wish there was a little bit more football creativity. And I think this is what bumps me often is like when you do integration, sometimes you have to really conform into what those players want. But we're talking about an American football team. So we want to celebrate like football culture and like the ethos of who they are as Cowboys. I don't feel like that depth went into this, which
right.
maybe it's not necessary, but I'm just calling it out. And then, innovation, was it innovative? I would say not really. We've seen this playbook before, but I think it was smart. I think the strategy that went into this like totally works because they integrated properly on platform across those several games. Each one of those games is a different subset of our audience. So you're reaching a broad swath there. And then off platform, their partnership with FCHQ just further like amplifies the campaign. Well done, Cowboys, and let's keep this train going. We got an interview with Ross Crump from Ardent, so let's check them out.
It is an absolute pleasure to have Ross Crump join us today. Ross has been working in the gaming space since the early start of his career, and after 6 years working with the leading agency NewGen, working on some of the most iconic campaigns with the Sidemen or the infamous Overwatch 2 campaign with John Cena, he now founded his own agency, Ardent, helping brands engage with the world's most influential communities. Ross, it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to Brands and Plate. How are you?
Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Having a lovely, relaxing week.
Perfect. Great to have you on a lovely Friday. I guess to start this interview, I'd love for our listeners to briefly mention a very quick overview of what you've done. But in the last 6 years, I'd love for our listeners to know a little bit more about you, about also like your new agency, how essentially maybe give us a bit of a flavor of how did Ardent come about and a bit more about your background as well.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, I've worked as you mentioned, at New Gen, I was there for 6.5, nearly 7 years, where I worked in a kind of a variety of roles. I joined the agency when there was only about 20 people there, and we were very focused on gaming. We were a gaming influencer agency essentially, and my role was very much in the creative and strategy departments. I kind of worked across both departments, offering brands essentially solutions to problems they faced, but utilizing influencers to solve those problems.
Mhm.
And then I was kind of given the opportunity to lead a few different departments whilst I was there. I took on the role of chief strategy officer, where I helped the agency kind of professionalize its approach as it kind of scaled up to around 120 headcount. And then about 3 years ago, I was given the opportunity to move to New York to help oversee the agency's expansion into the United States. And that was driven by one of our key clients who we'd worked with for, at that point, about 3 years. And so I had a really strong relationship with that client and kind of made the move to come out here and oversee that relationship. And so, yeah, I have been in New York ever since, worked with the New Gen team and continued to develop the business out, working again really closely with clients on strategy and creative. And then left the agency about 6 weeks ago now, actually,
Yeah.
to launch Ardent, which, yeah, as you mentioned, it's about essentially looking at how communities are really the leading force of influence within marketing. And I think it's always been the case, but I think the way that the industry is moving and how easily accessible communities are to brands now through social media and through influencer marketing, I think there's a really interesting opportunity there that wasn't really being utilized. And so that's why I kind of started my own agency.
That's awesome. Congrats on
Mm.
setting up your own shop. That's
Thank you.
massive.
Yeah, it's in equal measures scary as it is exciting. But I'm very much one of these people who I think always think to myself, well, if I'm on my deathbed in hopefully about 50 years time, do I want to look back and think, oh, I wish I'd done that, or did I do it? And so that's how I've ended up in New York. It's why I end up in places like LA for random periods of time. And it's why I've ultimately set up Ardent now.
High risk, high reward.
Exactly. Yes. Sounds like
Um,
someone who knows what that's like.
yeah, I've been white knuckling it for about 15 years, so still positive.
Yeah.
But
Good.
my first question for you is like, what is the biggest shift that you've seen in the influencer marketing industry, like over the past like 5 or 10 years, and how has that affected your business and your point of view?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. I think the influencer marketing industry, I mean, it's crazy, right? How it came out of nowhere seemingly. It kind of like
Mm.
bubbled up, simmered away in the background, I suppose, for a few years, and then all of a sudden everyone was talking about it. And I think around the time I joined New Gen, there was a lot of brands who were still very unsure as to what influencer marketing was or what it could really do for them. There were some brands who'd been doing it for quite a few years, and then there was actually some brands who were in the process of in-housing it. And so it's always kind of been that way, I think, where there's been a lot of uncertainty, or I suppose different approaches to what influencer marketing is and how it works and how it can be used by brands. And that is inherently led to brands being at very different stages of their journey with influencer marketing. And so I suppose, look, depending on the vertical that you look at, depends on where I think we have seen the most significant change within influencer marketing. One thing I do think is actually happening at the moment, and it's probably not happened quite yet, but it is going to happen very quickly, is the I suppose the pressure on influencer marketing to deliver more meaningful results than what it
Mhm.
kind of set out to achieve. And that was, I suppose, back 5, 6 years ago. Brands were very comfortable with influencers just posting some content and getting a ton of views or some likes and comments on videos. And I think now, and I'm someone who's a big advocate for this, I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's adequate. I think when the conversation is being led by effectiveness and there's so much pressure, economical pressure and kind of business pressure in general, I think the question has to be, what more can influencer marketing do for us? And so I actually have tried to stop using the word influencer marketing and trying to use the word creator marketing a lot more, because I think if you look at a lot of studies and a lot of data around influencer marketing, there are questions around what it actually will do for brands, and it's different on the vertical, different on the size of creator, different on the audience type.
Mhm.
But I think this kind of lens that is being put on it now around its effectiveness is going to be the biggest change we'll see. And I think it's a great opportunity for measurement agencies to kind of come out and say, we've got really effective ways of measuring success with influencer marketing. But I also think it's going to put a lot of pressure on agencies and brands who've gotten away with saying, we generated 10 million views and that's really exciting, to actually, well, yeah, so what? Like, what is that really doing for us as a brand, or what is that doing for the creator? And that's what I think is the biggest change we're seeing and will continue to see.
Yeah, and it segues really well with my next question, because we've seen a lot in, you know, bold marketing publishers like The Drum or Ads Age as well, saying that, you know, I've seen articles going, influencer marketing is dead, and there's also obviously a lot of marketers that still see a lot of value into it. Others are a little bit more skeptical around it, and I think it goes with what you're saying. It's less about the awareness and the reach that you can get, and more about that bottom funnel objective. I guess from your experience, how, with this in mind, like what would be your approach and what would be your recommendation to brands in order to get some measurable return when they are working with a creator, or maybe with those communities that you're also representing now?
Yeah, I think it depends in a lot of ways based on the brand itself. I hate to be one of those people that's always like, it
It
kind of
depends.
depends. Yeah. But I think that's one
With
of the
your
things
use
that,
case, if you have a use case of something that worked really well for you.
yeah, yeah. And so I do. I think one of the issues we've got within influencer marketing and even within social media marketing is a lot of people taking very broad brush kind of claims or strokes to marketing and its ineffectiveness. And what that does is it kind of leads people down a bit of a merry garden path of, you know what, I can take this approach and it's going to work for me. And then when it doesn't, they think, oh, well, it's not effective. And it's like, no, you've just kind of probably taken the wrong approach to it. But actually, as a tactic, influencer marketing or creator marketing can be very effective for you. When I
Uh-huh.
worked with Samsung as a client, I've worked with them for about 6 years now, and we helped them launch their gaming monitor proposition in the United States. And it was a really interesting challenge to face because it was a very saturated market. It's a very high
Yeah.
price point entry. Some of their products were over $1,000, over $2,000. And you're kind of in this position where you are looking at the market and trying to understand consumers don't purchase gaming monitors every day of the week.
So,
It's a much longer sales cycle, right? People are
sadly.
keeping a monitor for, yeah, like 2, 3, 4 years potentially before they look at upgrading. There are so many other influential factors that help contribute to why someone would buy a certain brand. And Samsung had kind of come to us and said, you know what, we want to do some influencer marketing around this. And for the first couple of years, it was that time where brands were really accepting of influencers driving brand awareness. And that was where they needed to be because no one knew who Samsung Odyssey was, which was the product category. Um, Fast forward a couple of years, you kind of get into that point of, well, we've been doing influencer marketing for a few years now. Now we want to showcase its driving ROI. And one of the things we did in tandem to not just continue to evolve and adapt the strategy was we did market research and we did a huge study around how consumers were shopping for gaming monitors.
Uh-huh.
And what it actually told us was it allowed us to pinpoint how consumers were actually engaging with Twitch streamers versus a YouTube influencer versus social media channels in general versus those kind of top 10 gaming monitor articles you would find on Google. And so what we were able to do is say to the brand, well, we can do influencer marketing for you, but this is the metric we should really be measuring in order to align with what your consumers are actually doing. It doesn't make a lot of sense for us to track this against direct ROI from a sales perspective
Uh-huh.
because we know that no one is going to watch a Twitch stream and go and buy a gaming monitor over the price point of $500, say. I can't exactly remember what it was, but it was really indicative that people would go from a Twitch stream to then watching a YouTube video. And so it was actually when they'd watched a YouTube video and they'd kind of said, oh, I want to buy a Samsung monitor, they probably then would wait for a sale. And they weren't going to
Mm.
buy that monitor straight away unless there was maybe a game coming out that incentivized them to go, I need the best monitor. And so there was all these kind of interesting factors that contributed to consumer decision. And all we were able to do at that point was say to the brand, let's not just do influencer marketing for the sake of it. Let's think really strategically and tactically about what type of influencer marketing are we going to do? Where does it live? What message is it telling our consumer? And almost most importantly, where do we direct them next? And that isn't always to Samsung.com. It could be to another YouTube review, or it could be to
Yeah.
a review site, or it could be to a retail partner. And that I think is a good example of where I think the use of influencer has to evolve as well.
So when brands are like coming into gaming and building their own virtual worlds on these UGC gaming platforms, how should they be thinking about influencer marketing to support those efforts?
Yeah, I think virtual worlds are, I have a love-hate relationship with them. I've done a lot of virtual worlds myself with brands in the past. We've done them with brands like Samsung, where we created kind of worlds in Fortnite.
Yep.
But I think it can be, again, going back to the effectiveness piece, I think it can be a really challenging thing to demonstrate to brands at the end of the year. What did we achieve out of spending that money on creating that really cool environment? I think the way that influencers play a part is arguably when you flip that on its head and you actually use influencers sometimes to create those worlds or to be the lead of those worlds, and then to have brands either present or sponsor those environments, because I think gamers inherently relate more to influencers or creators than they do to brands. I think everyone does, right? It's just a human connectivity. And so I think I've seen some examples in the past where Cypher, PK, really well-known Fortnite influencer, has created worlds within Fortnite, and then brands have kind of got involved in that and taken part. I think that's a really effective way to do virtual worlds. What I can't really speak to transparently is Roblox, because I'm not hugely familiar with it. I know there's a lot of brands who've done a lot of work within Roblox. And I know some brands have been really successful against what they've tried to achieve. Walmart is a great example. I follow Justin Breton on LinkedIn. I see all of his kind of content about how successful they've been. And I think they've kind of broadened that outside of Roblox now as a result. So there's clearly demonstrable value of doing virtual worlds. I've also, on the flip side, seen brands who haven't succeeded in doing it. And I think in a large part, where brands have failed, it's because they've not utilized creators properly. They've kind of just went, let's create a world, let's throw it into the game and hope we'll get organic visitors. And I actually think influencers are that connection between the brand and the community to go, no, you've got to come play this game because I'm going to play it at this time on this day, and you should be in the game playing it with me at the same time. And yeah, that's where I think brands miss a beat sometimes with virtual worlds.
Yeah, I love that insight. I want our listeners to take that insight away from listening to this. Is essentially traditionally we think of influencer marketing and influencers as these external sources that are supporting what was created. But to your point, sometimes it's great to just partner with a famous builder in these spaces, and they themselves are the influencer. So
Yeah.
both the product and the influence and the promotion of that product are happening via the same person, which I think is super interesting.
Yeah, it's like these influencers are playing these games all the time, right? So they've got a natural link to the community who are playing the games as well. I think a brand diving in and going, we've just created this world and it's going to be so cool, like, come and play this world. It's like you've got a barrier, I think, there, which is that there are already another 100 different worlds within that game at that one time.
That's right.
That is claiming the attention of that player. Whereas I think when you've got an influencer who is able to kind of say, no, come and play something I've co-authored or I've co-created, something I feel really passionate about, I think it gives a different level of gravitas to an activation that I think speaks a lot more to communities.
Yep.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's how a lot of games, even game developers, like traditional game developers, that's how they also see they know the importance of influencers to also attract their own audiences into these games. And I guess on the topic of video content and partnering with influencers for their streams or VOD content, I think like looking back at some of the conversation I had with brands, and I'm sure you had very similar conversation, it can be a bit daunting for a brand that's quote unquote non-endemic to gaming, where Samsung, maybe there's a bit more of a direct affiliation to gaming. They are part of that world. But if we think about a fashion brand or beauty brand, to begin with, I think it was a bit of a foreign world, and also the live streaming structure was very different. I love, I guess, to get your take for brands that are still a bit skeptical on how do they fit in within those conversation. And I think you and I spoke about different methods around the issues around just product placement or longer term partnership. I'd love for you maybe to deep dive into how those brands can buy legitimacy to these communities that are a bit skeptical when a new type of brand comes to their create.
Yeah, there's a bit of a framework, isn't there, around whether you're a brand like, I suppose, Elf. Elf are a really great example. I actually posted about them earlier this week about some of the work they're doing on LinkedIn. They are selling products that aren't inherently gaming products, but they are speaking. They are products that gamers use, right? And so they have kind of understood that gaming is a really large audience segment for them, and their consumers are interested in this thing, and so therefore they need to show up and be regularly visible to them. And then they've kind of created this format that streams regularly on Twitch, where they have talent who are speaking to their community and creating content around it. And they are clearly a brand that has kind of committed to the long play. They've just announced that they're going to be using Twitch ad formats, Amazon ad formats within Twitch content to allow people to buy their product straight away through Twitch streams. So they're clearly people who they've got goals. They're a brand that have got goals. They want to ultimately sell product, but they've clearly demonstrated their long term commitment. There are other brands who are not gaming products, who dip in and dip out. They're constantly in and out of gaming, and I think McDonald's is a really good example of them. They appear very frequently, but you can't kind of understand what their mission and vision is towards speaking to gamers. And there's a real contrast between, if you look at like an Elf, who their mission is to essentially drive inclusivity. They want to make everyone feel welcome as part of their brand, and you can see it across all of their marketing touch points. So however they show up in gaming, it just kind of feels natural and right for them as a brand. It feels like an extension of what they're doing. Whereas I think McDonald's show up, and McDonald's is still just McDonald's as you would expect to see them, and then they're doing something within the gaming space. And some of it's great. Like, I've seen some of the work that they've done at events like TwitchCon. I've seen some of the kind of the online activations they've done. It's great stuff, but you can't really understand what their long-term vision or goal is for the community, or what they're really adding back into the community. And that kind of question around what are you contributing to the community is something we used to always challenge brands at New Gen. It's like, great, you want to come into gaming and you want to be speaking to gamers, but like, let's be really, really explicit about why you are here. Are you here to sell a product really quickly, or are you here to invest long-term in the community and reward them with something or give something back? I don't think there's anything wrong with a brand being really upfront and saying, we just want to sell something to gamers because we've seen there's opportunity. Like, we live in a capitalist society. It's what happens, right? Let's not try and stick our heads in the sand about this. People are trying to sell product constantly, and big brands trying to sell things to people with low disposable income. Let's not be silly about that. Like, we know that happens. But let's be honest about it, so we can then be really strategic and tactical about how we actually would do that, and not try and make it out as if you're going to kind of go to the shop for a carton of milk and then not come back. Like, you are going to either really commit to this space, or you're gonna dive in and dive out. And I think that allows marketers to be, and specialists within the gaming space, to be way more effective about that, and way more intentional about what they're doing. And what I think the worst thing that brands can do when trying to get into the gaming space is think they're going to try and do something that ultimately they're not going to try and do.
Well, I love that Ardent takes such a focus on communities. I think it's smart. Can you talk a little bit about the difference of focusing on community versus like mega influencers?
Yeah, and I noticed this was like almost like a theme of the discussion we were going to have around like the role of a mega influencer versus a community. I think they're entirely different. I actually think mega influencers have their own communities, and I think there's a point where mega influencers kind of go from being what is a mega influencer into being celebrity level, where their communities actually become a core part of their sell proposition. And then a good example of that would be like Mr. Beast, Speed, Kai Cenat. Their communities are the things that essentially make them go from being, oh, well, they're an influencer, to they're a brand. They have their own community of people who are
Yep.
passionate about them. I don't think mega influencers are going anywhere. I think they're still very important. I think it's just a category of people that can be used to influence communities. I think the reason why communities are interesting for me is because if you look at the data tells you that friends, family, communities are one of the biggest drivers of influence around brand discovery, brand purchase, consideration. Out of every other touch point. And I was at a youth marketing strategy event in New York on Wednesday, and they did a kind of a, a track about how Gen Z are influenced by brands and the brands that are influencing Gen Z. And what was really interesting was they kind of made a point of talking about how friends and family and communities was something that was regularly being spoken about and regularly being discussed by their focus groups, and community in particular appeared as a real place where people were discovering other brands. And so I don't think communities are going anywhere. I really think it's the next influencer marketing. I think brands are going to get really excited about it, talk about it a lot. Reddit is going to become a talking point, Discord, WhatsApp, and that's just a really interesting thing that we should always be thinking about ultimately.
Yeah, don't follow the hype and don't follow the headlines. And I think this
Yeah.
is something that's it's even if you are interested into Roblox, this is such a large platform that you also need to be a bit more granular onto like what side of that audience are you interested in, or even if you want to do Twitch. I think the issue that we discussed also previously with Magali from Dentsu was, the stereotypes that you have around communities. Like, would take it, let's say gamers, that there is a lot of stereotypes and there's not just one type of profile. So I think this is a great piece of insight to leave our audience with. It's be a little bit more granular about who you're talking to, and then like understanding what value your brand is going to add to their experience and how they're consuming content on these respective platforms.
Yeah, I think Roblox is a great example of there are some brands on that platform who are doing some really great work because they've understood there is such a huge player base and there is such a vast amount of people to speak to who might be shopping their product in years to come. But as a brand, you've got to be really confident that to take that approach, you are not going to have, and I used to always use this reference at New Gen, you're not going to have a CFO at the end of the year saying, great, we spent all that money in January, where's the return by December?
Yeah.
You've got to have that clear understanding internally that you'll spend money from January to December, maybe for the first 3 years before you can get that audience to an age group where they're actually going to buy their first Gucci bag or they're going to buy their first, I don't know, Louis Vuitton bag. And that's what I think as marketers, this balance around effectiveness and actual output. We just need to be really honest about what does the output do to contribute to that level of effectiveness. And yeah, that will be a tale for the ages and not one we can unfortunately solve in this conversation.
Thank you so much, Ross. I feel like I could continue speaking with you for a really long time, but we have unfortunately to go back to the rest of our episode. But it was such a pleasure to have you. Thank you again for the time that you spent with us and for all of your insight that you shared today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on and
Thanks,
enjoy your
Ross.
weekends.
Take it easy.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again so much for Ross for joining us today. I really appreciate. I could have spoken to Ross for a really long time, as you can tell, but I think the key takeaway for me was, I think a little bit to what we were discussing in earlier in the episode. I feel like because now there's such an abundance of content, AI generated content. I do wonder, he is really like pitting on something that probably we'll see more and more, where people are going to turn to their friends for brand recommendation, or they're going to turn to like really micro communities, because I think there's probably less of a trust on the sponsored content that you're seeing, or even like mega influencers where they're now becoming, I guess, like ads, like ad channels, because they're constantly promoting a new product and there's a bit of a distrust around that. So I do really like, I think this is really smart of him and probably smart for brands.
That was my exact thing that my big takeaway was shifting away from the mega influencer to communities. And I think this goes back to the concept of value that we keep talking about. It's like when you reach and speak to a broader community and offer them value, that's something that really resonates.
Hmm.
And if you look at something like a mega influencer, it's very much like a commercial or like a
It,
celebrity. It's the
yeah,
same thing. It's like, I'm so famous and amazing, and I'm telling you to go buy this thing. It's
yeah,
like
exactly.
that. What value do I get out of that? So yeah, I mean, I think that the sort of that's just a parallel shift that we're seeing both on the influencer side and the gaming side. But
Yeah.
it all makes a ton of sense, in my opinion.
Um, let's move on to our hit, miss, and bets of the week.
Let's go. What's your hit?
Oh, my hits. Do you remember when I was complaining that you mentioned that Japan was releasing those new flavors and they've done like a Street Fighter activation,
Yes.
and I was complaining that in the UK we're not gonna get it, da 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 da, blah blah blah. But I'm really happy that the UK finally has done a really cool activation with their agency Leo Burnett. So they, I don't know if they meant it to happen while the Louvre also, got broken into, but there is a campaign called McDonald Heist, where, am I
Heist?
saying that right? Heist?
Heist. Heist.
Heist. Heist. Where essentially it's a whole campaign where they go into different country and steal the recipes of like specifics of of specific recipes that can only be sold at McDonald's in that country. So now in the UK,
Mm.
you can get the garlic and black pepper McNuggets from Japan. So you can try
Damn.
some of this.
Okay.
Yeah. Then you can also get the pineapple Spicy from Australia and mac and cheese triangle from UAE's. So I just thought that was really cool because I don't know if you watch this, but I love those YouTube videos of food influencers when they go to different
Yes.
countries and test
Hmm.
the menus of different McDonald's. It's shit content, but I love it. So I
Well,
love the fact that these recipes are not coming to the UK. I just think it's a cool concept.
no, that's dope. As a world
Yeah.
traveler myself, I love always going to
Right? It's
different
so fun. It's
countries,
so
and you're like,
fun.
wow, they do a hamburger like that? It's so weird, but it's yummy. But yeah, if they could just bring that culture to us, I think that's smart.
My miss was, and it's more of an idea, but I'm seeing a lot on LinkedIn and also on certain articles like on Marketing Week. They were essentially talking about brands tapping into gaming, but what they actually meant is gamification. And I think there's
Mm.
something that we need to highlight. There is a real big difference between tapping into gaming and gaming culture and gamification, because I think a lot of brands think, well, we've done gaming and it hasn't worked out for us, but what they meant is that they would have done a CRM campaign where maybe you have like a little mini game to be able to unlock certain points, and it's all on their own apps or own platform. This is not what I would call tapping into gaming
Going into
culture, where
gaming.
you actually
Yeah.
go into a gaming environment, or collaborate with gaming influencers. And I just wanted to have a little bit of a difference, because I think certain brands have probably a misunderstanding of what it means to actually bring their brands into gaming. And I just wanted to have a bit of this. It's less of a miss, it's more of a flag of like, there's a really big difference between taking codes of games and creating something that's gamified versus actually going inside a gaming platform, working with gaming influencers and really being part of that culture. So just wanted to flag that doing a mini game on your social is not tapping into gaming culture, sadly.
I concur.
And
What's your bet?
my sorry,
What's your bet?
my bet. So it's kind of a last minute one, but it's probably not new. I just feel like I thought the wave of nostalgia, we were kind of done after COVID, but I'm seeing more and more brands, probably because of the states in which we are now in the world, tapping even more and doubling down into nostalgia.
That's a great note. And I think there's a parallel to this concept of hyper personalization is inside of advertising, right? Which is like making messages that are so curated that you actually connect with it. And
Mm-mm.
there's nothing more personal than your personal nostalgia. It's
Yes,
like, wow, I love this thing. I lived this thing. And now you're connecting your brand to that
to
that
that.
feeling, which is that's like worth its weight in gold. But
Absolutely. But that's
I'm
that's
with
it
your
for
bet.
yeah, that was my bet.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah,
And next week, really excited to have Anne Margot Rode, founder of Creators Corp, one of Fortnite's leading studio.
that's going to be dope. Okay, Edward, please read us out.
And that was Brands in Play. Thank you for joining the podcast where we explore immersive marketing and the people who are leading it. Co-hosted by Alban Priou and Nick Hill, our show today was produced by myself, Edward Regu, with creative direction by Joey Jerder and Javed Kazmi.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views, policies, or positions of host employers. The information shared during this podcast is based on personal experience and publicly available information and is intended for informational purposes only. Any references to specific platforms, companies, or partnerships are made in a personal capacity and do not imply endorsement, partnership, or official association with any organization.